Have you ever walked away from a conversation feeling smaller than when you entered it, but couldn't quite explain why? Maybe they cut you off mid-sentence. Maybe they laughed a little too hard at your expense. Maybe they didn't say anything overtly cruel, but somehow, through their tone, their silence, their dismissiveness, they made you feel invisible. If you've ever felt that, you are not alone. This is a painful but common truth that many of us experience in silence, questioning our own sensitivity. But that feeling isn't just in your head. It's a real, measurable phenomenon. Science has a name for these subtle acts of disrespect, microaggressions. Psychologists describe them as death by 1,000 cuts, and they are quietly impacting your health in ways you might not realize. That quiet ache in your soul, that sense of being diminished, it's more than just a feeling. It's a signal. So today, we're not just going to talk about feelings. We're going to look at the unspoken cost of disrespect, backed by evidence. We will explore how a lack of boundaries isn't a sign of kindness, but a quiet drain on your well-being. Stay with me, because this might be the conversation your body and soul have been waiting for. This is the moment you stop questioning yourself and start understanding the profound link between your dignity and your health. Many of us were raised with a noble idea, that kindness is a virtue that should be given freely. We were taught to be agreeable, to avoid conflict, to offer our time and energy without expecting anything in return. But there is a hidden tax on kindness when it is not protected by boundaries. It's a tax paid not in dollars, but in your own sense of self-worth and, as we now know, your physical and mental energy. Kindness without discernment doesn't just go unnoticed, it gets consumed. Imagine a man named David. He works in an office where he is known as the nice guy. He's the one who always says yes, covering shifts for colleagues, staying late to finish a group project, even taking the blame when things fall apart to keep the peace. Everyone calls him reliable, a team player. But when the time comes for a promotion, he is overlooked. Not because he is unqualified, but because his presence has become background noise. His time, his energy, his voice, they were never things to be respected, only things to be used. He never trained them on how to treat him, so they defaulted to treating him as a resource, not a respected peer. This isn't just a story about being nice. It's a case study in burnout. The Journal of Occupational Health Psychology confirms that a lack of boundaries between our work and personal lives is a direct predictor of emotional exhaustion. You think you're being helpful, in reality, you're paving your own road to burnout. Each time you say yes when you mean no, you are making a small withdrawal from your own energy reserves. And those withdrawals add up. The Stoics understood this balance. Marcus Aurelius reminded us that our dignity must come from within, but virtue without wisdom becomes a vulnerability. And in the modern world, this vulnerability is exploited through those microaggressions we mentioned. Every dismissive comment, every idea of yours that gets ignored until someone else says it, every time your contribution is met with silence, these are the small, almost invisible wounds. Science tells us these aren't just slights to your ego. They are tiny stressors that accumulate, creating a state of chronic, low-grade stress that wears you down over time. Overlooking them isn't a sign of strength, it's an act of self-abandonment. So the question becomes, how do you remain a kind person without paying this hidden tax? How do you turn your kindness into a source of strength, rather than a reason to be overlooked? It begins by understanding that your kindness is valuable, and like all valuable things, it must be protected. So, how do you protect your kindness without becoming cold or aggressive? This is where we can draw wisdom from an unlikely source, Machiavelli. He wrote that a leader must learn from two animals, the fox, to recognize traps, and the lion, to scare off wolves. This isn't just advice for rulers, it's a manual for navigating the complexities of modern relationships. The traps today are subtle, a backhanded compliment, strategic silence, a joke made at your expense. And the wolves are the patterns of disrespect that, if left unchecked, will erode your self-worth. Being the fox means developing discernment. It's the ability to sit in a room and feel that something is off, not because of what was said, but how it was said. It's recognizing that not every smile is friendly and not all praise is genuine. The fox doesn't fight every battle, it wisely avoids the snares it sees. It doesn't require a confrontation. It just requires you to see the situation for what it is and adjust your own level of engagement. You simply stop offering your best ideas, your deepest thoughts, and your most valuable energy to people and places that have proven they will mishandle them. But discernment alone isn't enough. You must also embody the lion. This is not about roaring or attacking. A lion's power comes from its presence. It doesn't have to prove its strength, it simply is. It carries a weight, a stillness, a sense of self-possession that signals to the world that it cannot be trifled with. This is the crucial point many of us miss, fearing that setting boundaries will make us seem hostile. Let's be very clear, a boundary is not a wall you build to shut the world out. It is a threshold you control, defining what you allow to enter your space. It isn't about being cruel, it's about being clear. Think of a woman named Elise, working under a manager who never criticized her directly, but consistently withheld recognition. Her ideas were met with silence in meetings, only to be applauded when a male colleague repeated them minutes later. For a time, she tried harder, the fox in her saw the trap, but the lion was silent. Then one day, she stopped. She stopped over-explaining. She stopped seeking his approval. Instead, she built her value elsewhere, sharing her best insights with other departments. When a new opportunity arose, she took it, quietly, firmly, without drama. Her absence became the roar her voice never needed to be. Here is what this looks like in practice. The next time you are in a conversation and someone interrupts you, try this. Don't fight to reclaim your turn. Don't talk over them. Simply stop talking. Pull back your energy and look at them with a calm, neutral expression. Let the silence hang in the air. More often than not, the other person will feel the shift and trail off. You haven't said a word, yet you've said everything. That is the lion's presence. Recognizing the disrespect is the fox, the calm, firm non-reaction is the lion. But this external strategy is only half the battle. The true revolution begins inside. Have you ever found yourself in a loop of over-explaining? Justifying why you need a night alone, defending a boundary you've set, or watering down your feelings so that someone else won't feel uncomfortable. We do this because we believe, on some level, that if we can just find the right words, the other person will finally understand and respect us. We think we are seeking harmony, but what we are actually doing is seeking permission to have our own needs met. And every time we do this, we are sending a devastating message to ourselves, that our feelings are not valid until they are validated by someone else. Here is where the conversation shifts from psychology to biology. This isn't just about feelings, it's about your physical health. Groundbreaking research, published in journals accessible through PubMed, has shown a direct link between what they call social self-threat and your body's stress response. A social self-threat is any situation that endangers your sense of value and standing in a group, things like being publicly criticized, ignored, or having your competence questioned. When you experience this, your brain doesn't just register it as an emotional slight. It triggers the release of the stress hormone, cortisol. Cortisol is your body's built-in alarm system. In short bursts, it's useful for survival. But when you are constantly in situations where you feel the need to justify your existence, your body is in a state of chronic, low-grade alarm. This sustained release of cortisol is not harmless. It's linked to a host of health problems, from increased anxiety and depression to a higher risk of heart disease and a weakened immune system. So, let's be perfectly clear. When you repeatedly tolerate disrespect, you are not just being patient. You are subjecting your body to a slow, steady drip of a powerful stress hormone. Self-respect, therefore, is not a luxury or an act of ego. It is a biological imperative for your long-term health. Think of a man named Evan. For years, when his partner mocked his goals as unrealistic, he would launch into long explanations, laying out his plans and defending his vision. He thought he was communicating, but he was actually pleading. One day, after another dismissive comment, he did something different. He didn't argue. He didn't defend. He simply looked at his partner and said, calmly, "I'm no longer discussing my goals with you." The silence that followed was immense. He wasn't being aggressive, he was being definitive. He stopped explaining and started embodying his own standard. In that moment, he took back control of his own cortisol levels. He chose his health over the need to be understood by someone who had proven they were unwilling to listen. Understanding this changes everything. It reframes the act of setting a boundary from a potential conflict into an act of self-preservation. You are no longer just protecting your feelings, you are protecting your physical body. This knowledge is the foundation you need to stand on when you face the most difficult challenge of all, when the disrespect comes not from a colleague or a stranger, but from someone you love. What do you do when the wound wears a familiar face? It's one thing to walk away from a disrespectful colleague or a rude stranger. But what happens when the subtle dismissiveness, the jokes that cut a little too deep, or the chronic lack of consideration comes from a parent, a sibling, a partner, or a lifelong friend? This is the most painful form of disrespect, because it's wrapped in love and history, creating a profound sense of confusion. Your heart wants to make excuses for them, they didn't mean it, that's just how they are, family is complicated. You call it loyalty, you call it patience. But often, it is a form of self-betrayal disguised as virtue. The Stoic philosopher Seneca warned, "A man who suffers before it is necessary suffers more than necessary." And we suffer unnecessarily when we wait for people to change who have built a lifetime of patterns. We hope our silence will teach them our worth, but it rarely does. Instead, it teaches them that our boundaries are flexible, that our feelings are secondary to their comfort. The truth is, you cannot control how others act, but you have absolute control over what you choose to accept. Let's talk about a man named Jacob. He adored his older brother, but as they grew into adults, a painful dynamic emerged. His brother rarely called unless he needed something. In family gatherings, he would interrupt Jacob's stories, dismiss his opinions with a wave of his hand, and make jokes about his career. For years, Jacob said nothing. It's just his brother's way, he told himself. But the quiet erosion was taking its toll. One day, at a dinner with new friends, one of them accidentally cut him off mid-sentence. Instinctively, Jacob went silent, physically recoiled, and let the conversation move on without him. In that moment, a cold realization hit him. His reaction wasn't about the stranger at the table. It was the result of years of training himself to disappear in order to keep the peace with his brother. From that day forward, Jacob made a quiet decision. He didn't have a dramatic confrontation. He didn't send an angry text. He simply stopped being the one to always initiate contact. He stopped chasing his brother's approval. When his brother eventually noticed the distance and asked what was wrong, Jacob's reply was calm and simple, "Nothing is wrong. I've just stopped pretending I'm okay with feeling invisible." That quiet, firm boundary changed everything. It wasn't about punishing his brother, it was about honoring himself. Leaving a room that costs you your sense of self is not an act of aggression, it is an act of profound self-respect. And sometimes, those rooms are the living rooms of our childhood homes or the dinner tables of our longest friendships. The people who get upset when you finally draw a line are often the ones who benefited most from you having none. Their departure from your life, or the uncomfortable shift in the dynamic, is not your failure. It is your clearing. It is the painful but necessary act of making space for relationships that are reciprocal, respectful, and don't require you to shrink to be loved. If you have ever felt that you have to choose between your dignity and a relationship, this is your moment of clarity. If you are ready to stop shrinking and start clearing the space you deserve, take a moment right now and affirm it. Drop a comment below and write, "Respect claimed," to declare that you are no longer available for disrespect, no matter the source. And if this message is resonating with you, hit that subscribe button and join a community that is choosing to stand tall. The journey to reclaim your ground isn't a loud revolution fought with anger and ultimatums. It is a quiet rebellion, waged within. It's the moment you choose not to laugh at a joke that stings. It's the decision to let a text message go unanswered instead of defending your boundaries. It's the calm realization that you were never meant to earn your own dignity. It was yours from the start, not granted by others, but inherited as your birthright. This is the ultimate lesson from both the Stoics and the strategists. True power is not found in controlling others, but in mastering yourself. Disrespect ends where reverence for yourself begins. And this is not selfishness, it is, as we have seen, a form of self-preservation. You are protecting your mind, your spirit, and your very biology from the slow poison of being diminished. You don't need to announce your new set of rules. You simply embody them. Your posture, your tone, the calm certainty in your eyes, they will say what your words no longer need to. Let your life become the argument. Let your peace be the proof. And as you walk this path, you will notice the world adjusts around you. The noise falls away, and what is left is real. The people who remain are the ones who never needed you to be small to feel big. So let this be your return. Not to rage, but to reverence. Not to proving, but to presence. Because you were never here to be liked. You were here to be whole. If you are choosing this path, affirm it one last time. Drop a comment below with the words, "I choose respect." Thank you for walking with us on this journey.